Welcome to another episode of Sludge Underground. Today I have got Garry with me. Garry, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Garry McCluskey. My stage name is GAZ. And Marcel, thanks so much for having me on the Sludge Underground. It's my first time.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm glad to have a chat. Always glad to have a chat with some local South African musos. However, you are originally from the UK, but I'm assuming you've been in SA for a while now.
Boerewors run through my blood now. I was born in the UK, up in Newcastle upon Tyne in the early 70s, frankly, and migrated to South Africa in the mid 70s, and literally lived my whole life in South Africa and schooled in South Africa and a few years in Swaziland as well. But so yeah, I'm a thoroughbred South African now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we're talking about today is you said it was your ninth single that is coming up in preparation for your album that's releasing.
Quite right, Marcel. I've just written a track called Lullaby for the World, and that is going to be the ninth single on my eventual album, which I hope to get the last track down next month. It's a very special one for me, this one, I must say, and I'm sure we'll get into it at some point. But yes, this is one piece of the puzzle that makes up an album that I'll be releasing in the coming months.
Well, absolutely. The first thing I really want to touch on after listening to the single itself is there a bit of a Billy Idol, Midnight Oil influence there? Like, am I hearing right? Like,
Oh, really? Okay. You know what? I'll take that. Whatever you hear, that's great. I mean, if you want to put me in, alongside of Billy and the boys from Australia, Midnight Oil. Wow, what a comment. Thank you.
the very first thing that I heard when that bass line kicked in, I was like, I'm hearing Midnight Oil, and then when the vocals started, I was like, I'm hearing some Billy Idol.
So what usually happens is somehow, and in my previous tracks as well, a lot of people tend to compare me to Dave Gahan from Depeche, which is I'll take as well, really. I mean, geez, to come into that kind of space. But yeah, absolutely loved all of my 80s and 90s music. So if it's got tinges of that somewhere in it, then I'm happy. And thank you for that comment.
No, absolutely. And like it's a Depeche Mode reference. That was also something that slipped my mind as well. But those were the first two that jumped to mind. When I listened to the single, I was like, huh, yeah, yeah.
I can't get out of it. I absolutely cannot get out of it. People give me horns because my profile picture even looks a little bit like Dave. And then on the other side, you know what? I'm trying not to be as rocky and alty. I get labeled with Rick Astley, and I take a lot of people take the mick for that. But yeah, yeah, keep going, but keep going.
So, like speaking of Rick Astley, like I've been seeing a lot of interviews with him lately, like in the present day, where he talks about his experience, dealing with musicians and stuff like that. And it's very interesting to see how he was like one of the original music memes before memes were a thing. And
Absolutely.
and like you realize like what kind of impact that had on his mental state and stuff. And a lot of people I don't think even consider taking that into account.
I tell you what, I think Rick actually outsold every artist at some point in the 80s, 90s, and that includes Michael Jackson. He was absolutely massive. Not as almost as well known as he could be with the modern tools, and I think that's what's really taken his career forward in leaps and chunks is just social media. And every single one of us artists need that social media and that buy-in, and we've got to have that connective tissue online with our listeners and followers. And a big name like him, it's so easy to watch. He's exceptional, and the meme thing is just it never stops. I still get sent Rick rolls. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if your song hits meme status, like that's embodied in history for pretty much ever at this point.
That's it.
So, like, if you look
That's
at
it.
like, if you try and look at who else was remembered right about those times, you're embodied in history, and you're still being used today, like nearly 3, 4 decades later. Like that's an achievement.
And generations
Yeah.
as well, because it just it grows. It's what we teach into our kids, and they teach into their kids, and if it's fun, it's fun. It's not going to stop.
like I saw like a lot of the things where you were talking about like your sort of process in recording this, and someone referred
Mm.
to you as a one take wah man. Please walk me through that comment. Please walk me through that statement because I laughed at
I
that.
don't even want to. I don't even want to tell your listeners this, but there came a point in the making of the track, and it was towards the end, and the listeners will hear when it really picks up for that last minute. My producer Mark Belling, who I've been working with throughout the entire course of this album since 2020, said to me, you know what, you can't just flip and sing and write words. By the time you started doing something, he said, jump on the wah pedal and give it some horns. So he was jamming away and hit record, and I jumped on the wah pedal and gave it stick. And this is the embarrassing part. It was actually on his studio desk. I wasn't using my foot; I was using my hand, and I just nailed it in one go. So that's all me. I'll take it.
Was this your first experience with the wah pedal, or was it a
Um,
concept you were at least familiar with how it worked?
most certainly from being in a recording studio. Put it that way. I did used to play a bit of guitar, but sadly, I hurt my wrist a bit, and I don't pick it up anymore.
Well, that is unfortunate. Like a wrist injury as a guitarist's worst nightmare. I think I still have nightmares
Yeah,
about those, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure I wasn't anywhere as good as yourself, Marcel, and the Thorns of Ivory, but yeah, yeah, but yeah, I couldn't pick it up any further. But yeah, the recording process was a very interesting one. We struggled to get going on this track. We just couldn't feel it, and we tried, and I think from the first night we probably ended up with about 5 or 6 clips and pieces of what we felt was half workable. And Mark sent it to me anyway, and I listened to it a few days, and I thought to myself, that middle part actually needs to be at the beginning to kick it off. And I pinched about 10 seconds of content, chucked it in the beginning, and I sent it to Mark, and he said, magic, this is it, we're off. So that actually resulted in an entire rewrite of Lullaby for the World from the inception of the song right up to the mid 8, excluding the choruses. So it was just a labor. Every time we sat down, something happened. The track froze, for instance. We couldn't get anything out of it. We took it into pieces and brought it into another track so we could record over it. And we're just calling it the longest production in history, which we giggle about. This actually started in November, and here we are sitting in February. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And like, one of the things I saw that you guys have been talking about was that, there was quite a bit of time involved in the production of the song, quite a bit more
Mm,
time than usual. And one of the things that you
mm,
guys really wanted to avoid doing was manipulating the track beyond its original concept and beyond its, how do I say, its
yes,
rawness and its, I guess, I
yes.
don't think this word was used, but its authenticity.
Thank you, Marcel. A lovely word to use for this. I think when you have something that starts looking like a good painting quite soon, and when we did find our direction, you don't want to fiddle with that too much. You don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to throw too much parts on top of it. And for the sake of a song like a lullaby, and by the way, this is obviously a rock lullaby. It needed to be pure, and when it needed to be pure, and it needed to be empty when it needed to be empty, and then bash your ears off when it needed a bit of anger. So absolutely, we listened to it over and over and over, and we just said, really, are we going to overwork this? And it just grows. It's the kind of song you listen to and then listen to, and you kind of get it. So I'm happy we didn't fiddle with it.
No, absolutely. I remember reading when I went through it first, and my first impression was that it was Mark Hayes who did the recording, but I see it's Mark Belling, or
Yes, Mark Billing. Mark Billing has a studio in Johannesburg. He records quite a lot of the dominant South African artists. I'm also aware of Mark Hayes, who I am silently connected with, who is also an exceptional producer, and I follow him too. But to make no mistake, Mark Billing, my producer, is the ex Mean Mr. Mustard Sama nominee, Sama winner, and Mark Hayes, I think, is the Idols guy, right?
I believe so, yes. Mark Hayes was one
That's
of the
right.
Idol guys, and he also, They were there for the I think opening for Bon Jovi as well.
Sure.
And like back in those days as well. And yeah, so but great. Mean Mr. Mustard, that is a name I haven't heard in a long, long time.
Yeah, the band songs still play regularly on the various stations. I'm connected with quite a few of the guys from those older days, and they did exceptionally well. I mean, the masterful cover of what was that huge cover that they did? Buttercup,
Yeah.
really is what really got them traction. And then, there's some really, really great older music in the Mustard era. So, anyone from the later 80s and 90s would certainly remember Mustard, up here in Johannesburg and touring. Exceptional band. And this is really what gives Mark Billing, the kudos that he can walk off a stage, pick up absolutely any instrument, and produce around an up and coming artist like myself, and give me the kind of sound that would come out of probably only his studio.
I'm sitting here and I'm like, my brain is reeling where I'm like, I don't think I ever realized in my youth that Mean Mr. Mustard was a South African band. And like it suddenly clicked now, that's for absolute sure.
I think that's what got them going so quickly. When speaking to Mark and that, they definitely had an international sound for an 80s band, and that all comes down to the ears and mastery of the people who were in that band. Absolute consummate professionals. So I say easy to do, but not. Very, very hardworking people.
And Mark was the vocalist of Mean Mr. Mustard.
Mark, yes, he was. Yeah, unfortunately, after I believe the lead guy passed, and I think then Mark Billing stood in as the front man and lead guitarist, and I can't see anyone else doing the job he did. But yeah, he's a magnificent producer, and I will continue going for as long as we can, and hopefully into a second album.
That's such a nice little piece of history that I've learned there today about the scene. That's such really
Nice, Marcel. There's so much to get through. I don't know
yeah.
how long your podcast is, but the 80s music scene in Johannesburg and around was just absolutely massive. And the venues that we used to have to go and play, and I played in a four-piece in the mid to late 90s called Crush, and I was the front man of that. But there were incredible bands. This was the start of the Nude Girls. It was the start of Arapaho, Squeal. I think they're from your sort of side of town, aren't they? Arapaho and Squeal. It was the start of Amersham and Sugar Drive and all of these massive great bands, just coming out and going to the Joburg scene, and certainly Mustard, going back to them, they were also part of that. So you don't see as much of it anymore. Everyone seems to be a little bit to themselves, doing their own gigs, but Johannesburg used to have some monster venues where the bands would just line up and play 2 hours each for, from 4 in the afternoon until 2 in the morning.
No, absolutely. Like that's like it is a little bit before my time. I think I caught the tail end of, the glory days of the music scene. I got involved in music a
Yeah.
bit late. I mean, I only picked up an instrument at 16, and this was already
Mm.
in around about 2010, 2011. Like, and this is when I started learning about South African music, and this is when I started becoming passionate about music and about the
Mhm,
local
mhm.
scene, and then slowly but surely delving into the history of it. So, like, I learn a lot
Yeah.
from the guys, especially speaking to someone like yourself, where I learn a lot about that era that I actually had no idea about.
Absolutely. No, well done, and well done for digging back into it, because South Africa really has had and got some talent, and we can bring you Void into the equation if you want. I know they're playing with OMD. I think it's in April. So some of these long-standing guys are still going, and they're still playing some really great gigs. And it just goes to show the strength in the era of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like, circling back to your single that's coming out, I see you've also made a lyric video for it that it looks like you had quite a bit of fun with. This also gives me the Depeche Mode vibe with the way that it's been edited with everything. What was your sort of game plan with that? Like, I saw that you said that it was sort of something that you did with a cell phone, that you recorded with a cell phone and then edited from there. Now, walk me through your process of that.
Well, the process starts as follows. You go. what budget have I got? And then you go, well, none. So what can I do myself? Because I, excuse me, I need to start appearing in some of my lyric videos. It's one thing I've been criticized about actually is hiding. I thought, all right, I'll check myself into this and let's just try it out. I'll go up into the study, turn the lights off, put a few lamps and lights up. I'll sticky tape my cell phone to a mic stand and play the track on my wife's phone and see if I can get some footage. And what happened was I basically took the footage and sang the song through twice and put that into an Adobe Rush app and superimposed the two tracks with a little bit of transparency. And there I am doing two different things, singing the same song. And I thought, actually, it's not too bad, although it's gritty. So that's how it kind of came about.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of things that will suit that vibe. I mean, not everything has to be super high end and like
Exactly.
high budget and whatnot. Like a lot of those things, a lot of the time can come off quite sterile, if that makes sense, if that wording makes sense.
Absolutely, because sometimes the high-end production doesn't match the content. Yeah, and I think what I've done there is a little bit gritty. It's certainly not going to work on a big high-definition TV, but people on the iPads and the iPhones and Android devices, excuse me, I think I'll sneak away. I'll sneak through it just. And then it's got the words of the song in there as well. And it actually turned into a cool little video. I tell you what, your listeners, and don't laugh at me. It's the first time I've been up in my study with no top on, wearing one of my wife's pearl necklaces. Okay, I thought, what are you doing, McCluskey? GAZ, this is not cool. But anyway, I stuck the content in and just turned it down in the background. But yeah, a couple of backstories are the best, eh?
Like from my experience in social media and interacting and spending a lot of time on social media, is a lot of the time the things that I see go viral are
Mm,
generally for reasons that you would not expect them to go viral. There
mm.
is no way to predict what how people are going to react, or
Yeah.
what suddenly going to become a trend. And like some of the things that
Mm-hmm.
you see are exactly what you've done, just like a video with no budget, for the sake of it. And those type of things are fully capable of doing that as well.
Absolutely. I got sent a YouTube video, and I don't even know the artist, by a very good friend musician called Jack Atlantic, and him and we talk closely behind the scenes about his profile and my growth, and he sent me this video. I think it's an American chap with a beard, literally standing in his backyard, filming himself, singing this over this track, and he does it all in one take. His voice is so exceptional that the rawness, the actual truth of what he was doing, and just showing himself as a human, just trended and trended and trended into the millions of views. And it's a backyard video.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Um,
because of the honesty of it all, and I think people with the beautiful music he did just read through that, and for me, that's actually what the world should be, a little bit more of these days, just a little bit more real, a little bit more raw. It's so what if there's a speck on your camera lens, or if you've bottom teeth are on the top and other way around, it doesn't matter. People want to see, I feel, reality. I think, and I think there's a big pushback to that, and let's
mhm.
hope that's the case.
People want to connect. People want to look at something and think, you know what, like this is really close to my own life. This is really close
Yeah.
to, my
Mhm.
experiences.
And my feelings and all of these things. Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so much you can look at, like, of this picture perfect dream. I do largely think that it also comes back to like envy. You can look at
Yeah.
something like that, and you know what? Eventually, even without realizing it, you could get tired of feeling that envy, of feeling, why can't my life be like this? You look at all these videos, you
Mhm,
look at
mhm, mhm.
the lavishness of it, or the prettiness of it, where it's,
Sure.
and you tend to sort of pull back from it because you want something more, because I think subconsciously you envy it.
Absolutely, and I think it's also overuse of media time as well, that people just want to connect at a level they feel that they belong. Because I said very respectfully and carefully that a lot of what's put out there, people will, whether they aspire to it, will never get close. And I'm talking about average Joes, and that's guys and girls. I mean, just be yourself and be you, and be straight up and natural, and people will love you for it. But don't be scared to do it. There's always someone who will connect with you.
And like also once again, sorry, circling back to your single, your lyrical content and the message that you've chosen to convey with the song about life just being a rat race, life being just with all the concerning factors of things going on in the world at the moment. Walk me through a little bit about your process of, like, how do I say, creating a synopsis of all of those things and bringing it down into the song.
I think originally I felt a strong need to write about my feelings of what was going on in the world, from a war, political, religious, famine / pollution / whatever. I'm very connected with the world, and I got to thinking that maybe the world itself needs a lullaby. Everyone sings a lullaby for a child or for this or that or whatever. And I thought, maybe it's time for the world to have a lullaby. And at the same time, I was saying, this madness can't go on. Is it not potentially time for some type of divine intervention from the heavens to say, guys, enough? What are you doing? And so I start moving into those kind of thoughts within the track itself. I start questioning people's involvement with spirituality, or people's just abstinence from making a difference. So I was really strongly pulled to writing something that would, on one hand, be a protest song, and on the other hand, be a prayer. And it's literally, Lullaby for the World is a prayer and a protest of what is going on Earth, and that forms the basis for the track. I then go into, the haves and have-nots, and the safe people, the not safe people. Will this happen in your town? Won't it happen? Yeah, at the end of the day, let's try and save this world we live in by stopping fighting.
I understand. Like, looking at the lyrics of your song as well, there's two lines that resonate with me, although they're not side by
Mm,
side. If God is watching, he must have looked the other way. And 8 billion people, does he even know their names? And
mm,
it's like you were saying, you look at what's going on in the world, and you said that you started working on this song around about November, right?
yeah.
So that was just after the whole debacle started between Israel and Palestine,
Yes.
and all those
Yes.
things as well. And then everything has just escalated from that point.
Quite
If
right.
you look at what's
Mm,
happening between Taiwan and China, that's not as commonly a
mm,
known thing, that
mm,
tension.
yeah.
There's obviously the
Yeah.
new tensions that have arisen between North Korea and South Korea, with a
Yeah.
large part of the demilitarized zone being
Yes.
ramped up again. And there's a whole bunch of other smaller, like, I can't even say smaller, but you look at the problems that are happening out in Africa as well. If you look at West
Mm,
Africa, if I'm
mm.
not mistaken, where there's currently problems with the elections that are happening.
Or there's some political interference, or
Exactly, yeah.
it's all of these kind of things that I feel are rolled into the song. But what I tried very carefully not to do was to point to any faction or
Mm.
any person's particular beliefs on these big matters. I ran the middle line. So whoever your God is your God. Whatever your country is your country. Whatever your feelings are yours. Whoever your politician is your thing. And you need to put your feet into the game to also try and help what's going on. I must be honest, I was a little bit scared of skirting around the God, heaven, and angels part of it. But being a mortal being on earth, I had that feeling of looking up and saying, guys, look at what's going on down here. We know you're working up there, but maybe it's time to come down and have a chat with people. So I'm not trying to poke at religion. I'm within the song itself. I'm praying that there is intervention.
Oh, absolutely. Like, nothing about it seems offensive or like attacking religion. A lot of it is just, like you said, an open question of what is happening? What are we doing? If you're up there, what is happening? Are you seeing what's going on? I understand those feelings. I feel those feelings.
Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of opinions out there. I think so. I'm just trying to make sure there's some PR around this.
No,
But
absolutely.
I think it's very natural feelings that we all go through, and the level of helplessness that some people may be going through, and saying, but look at this mess, and it's not within my hands to change. It's certainly not going to be the politicians. They're not going to stop dropping bombs, and therefore, really let the heavens open, and let's have some intervention.
But yeah, so like in closing, where can people find your music? You said you've got the album coming up. When is there a release date set for that?
So people can find my music first of all on my Facebook is I'll give my social links is just GAZ Music. It's GAZ Music SA. My Instagram is my full name, Garry McCluskey, and my YouTube channel is at Garry McCluskey 8467. All of my tracks are up on Spotify, Apple. These are the major world streaming platforms, and you'll be able to find Lullaby for the World on the 7th of March, Friday the 7th of March. It will release from all the digi streaming platforms. I'm not going to pin myself down to an album release date because there's a small way to go. But I hope I am welcome back at some point to come and introduce the entire album to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with me on this. What is it? What is today? Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday afternoon. It's been an absolute blast.
Marcel, you champion. Thank you so much for having me on Sludge Underground. To all of your listeners out there, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Guys, please jump on my socials and pre-save Lullaby for the World straight after this. And I hope you enjoy the song release on the 7th of March. Thank you and goodbye.